Welcome back to the Gary Sutton Show on WSBA on a Friday morning. We look back on that was a week. There wasn't a lot of what was talked about. We haven't really touched on it this morning. Hillary Clinton's email problems have certainly led to a bottoming out of her campaign, and she was on vacation. She headed back out to the campaign trail. There's word this morning she's trying to quietly talk Joe Biden out of running. So I want you to think about the people that are running right now. Well, you got Bernie Sanders, you got Joe Biden, you got Hillary Clinton. For all intents and purposes, Hillary is the baby of that crowd at 67 years old. Joe Biden is like, 70, 72 maybe? And I think Bernie Sanders is around 73, 74, something like that. So is this the best that the Democrats have to offer? We asked that question this morning to Dr. Gerard Lameiro, who's been with us before. He wrote an article on that. He said, should Democratic Dinosaurs lead America into the future? Dr. Lameiro is an author, a philosopher, economist, engineer, pretty smart guy. He's the author of Renewing America and Its Heritage of Freedom, America's Economic War, and Choosing the Good Life, and he joins us here this morning on the Gary Sutton Show. Always good to have you on the show, Dr. Lameiro. Welcome back.
Oh, it's great to be back with you. I always enjoy talking to you.
Well, thank you. And I thought your article was really interesting. You said it's really ironic and a sad commentary in the Democratic Party that three of their leading contenders for president are political dinosaurs from the past. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I was thinking about that at the beginning of the week when it was time to write an article, and I was thinking to myself, just think of the big three in the Democratic Party. There's Bernie Sanders, Hillary Clinton, and Joe Biden. This sounds like the dinosaurs. They want to lead the millennials? Give me a break. I mean, Bernie Sanders, he's a self-identified socialist, 73 years old, and we all know that socialism and Marxism trace their discredited philosophy right back to the 19th century book, Karl Marx, The Communist Manifesto, 1848. That's pretty old.
Well, you know what's interesting about him, though? He is the Democratic Party's Donald Trump right now. Why are people flocking to him so much? I mean, what does that say, though, about the Democratic Party that he's packing thousands of people in right now, isn't he?
Right. Well, I think what it's telling you is they don't really like Hillary Clinton, because the difference between Bernie Sanders, who's a socialist, and Hillary Clinton, who calls herself a progressive, she's a few years younger, 67, is the fact that they both agree on progressive socialist policies. I mean, they both want the same thing, so there's not much difference politically. It's just probably a lot of Democrats are worried that Hillary Clinton is going to lose this election. I mean, for all we know, she could be indicted. We don't really, there's a scandal going on that looks pretty strange, and it's being investigated, and we don't even know if she's available to run.
Yeah, she could be serving the state another way. You never know. But, it's interesting when you look at Sanders. I kind of equate it maybe a little bit to what the Republicans are doing with Trump right now, where it's citizens rubbernecking a little bit. They see a crash, which is our political system in this country, and they're kind of driving by it. And, they're looking at it, they're saying, oh, that's a crash. And then over here on the other side, something that looks a lot better to them. And they say, oh, okay, well, I'll take at least a good long passing glance at that, just from a curiosity standpoint. How do you see it?
Well, I see it in a long range. I've gone back and I've studied every critical election, presidential election, since 1789. And every so often, it could be every 36 years, it can be even longer, the American voter gets upset with the party. And right now, it's one of those years. I think this is going to be a critical presidential election because the people are mad at the Republican Party. They've elected people to go back there on the fact that they wanted to get rid of Obamacare, which Republicans can't stand. And actually, the whole country is about 2/3 against Obamacare. And they sent them back, and guess what? We still have Obamacare ruining our health care system. We still have them spending way too much money and borrowing in the trillions and trillions against our children's future. So I think the American people are mad at both parties, and they are looking for a change. And, 6 months ago, we might have even talked about it on your show. Everybody thought Bush was going to get nominated and Hillary was going to get nominated.
We did talk about that. You're right.
Yeah, and guess what? right now, it looks like neither of them may be nominated. Because Bernie Sanders is beating Hillary in some of the polls, and Joe Biden is looking much better in the polls for the general election than Hillary Clinton. He's polling, I think, 2, 3, double the gap between the Republican and the Democrat. So Biden's looking better than Hillary. Bernie's looking better than Hillary. I don't know if Hillary's going to last.
I don't know either. You said something interesting, though, that you said Democrats are mad at the Democratic Party, too. What is their anger about in the Democratic Party? Has the Democratic Party gone too far left? Or if you look at Sanders, have they gone left as far as they may want to go yet? Where do we stand? Because you look at the three choices out there. You look, if Biden gets in, you're looking at Obama policies continuing on, one would think. If you look at Bernie Sanders, you're looking at, the welfare state. I mean, the state's going to provide everything for everybody. You look at Hillary. Hillary is, first of all, what can the state provide for me and my husband? And then, second of all, she's much more pragmatic. One would say, by comparison, it's kind of like when you had Kerry running and Howard Dean. You looked at that and everybody said, oh, Kerry's far to the right of Howard Dean. He looks a lot more acceptable. Hillary, in some ways, looks more acceptable than Bernie Sanders. And yet you look at him, and as you rightfully pointed out, her policies aren't that much off the reservation from where Sanders is. So you do have three different looks at different kinds of Democratic Party. So what are the Democrats mad about who are the rank and file out there right now?
Well, that's a great question, and I think you're the first person who's asked me that, believe it or not. And it turns out that there are two groups of Democrats. There are more traditional Democrats who are upset that the Democratic Party has gone un-American. Yep. That their policies seem to be helping the Middle East Iranians more than they're helping us. And they're ignoring the border. Bill Clinton used to talk about trying to close the border, but now the Democrats don't even want to touch that. They want to just let anybody who wants to come in, bring in their diseases, bring in their narcotics, bring in whatever, So that's one part of it. The Democrats,
and most of all, by the way, bring in their votes, but eventually.
Oh yeah. Well, that's the obvious, right? Yeah, they want.
And the biggest helpers they have on that are the Republicans, who also want to bring in cheap labor. But that's a whole other day. But go ahead.
Yeah, and then there's the side of the Democratic Party represented by Hollywood and Elizabeth Warren, those kind of people who are so radical, so socialist, so progressive, they're off the charts, and they think Hillary isn't liberal enough, if you could believe that. And so there are some who want to take it further, and then there are some who want to bring it back and make the Democratic Party a little bit more like an American party, like it used to be. Like JFK was for tax cuts, and he wanted to protect America. So he was a Democrat in the tradition of Democrats. These folks are progressive socialists who are not in the tradition of the Democratic Party.
It's amazing when you look back at, let's say, a John Kennedy, which isn't all that long ago, back in the 1960s, and for some of us, it never seems that long ago, but it was. But if you took John Kennedy today, could he be elected? Could John Kennedy, if he ran for president today, let's say we took a theory here, and he ran for president today, and he said, by the way, I want to propose some tax cuts. And he would do that. That's one of the things that he did then. Could he be elected today in this particular version of the Democratic Party as it stands generally right now?
Well, I think he might get elected by the country, but I doubt if he'd get nominated by the Democratic Party.
Yeah, there you go.
The problem would be the Democratic Party has long since left him.
Yeah, exactly right. And I think, you look back at the days of the Kennedys and even a Hubert Humphrey, a Scoop Jackson, those kind of people. That was a whole different brand of Democratic Party, and maybe even to a lot of extent liberalism too, which still had the security of the country first and foremost, which I think still had a lot of the traditions and customs of the country first and foremost, and yet at the same time was willing to do some things for the benefit of the country, and maybe in a different way. And I think we could have legitimate debates at that time and yet still move forward.
And I also think they believed in the Constitution and the rule of law.
Yeah.
You mentioned about Obama and Joe Biden in another term, which is really what Joe Biden would be, a third term of Obama.
Exactly.
You know something? I don't think it'll take 100 days to wipe out the Obama legacy. I mean, his legacy is based on executive orders. I mean, that agreement with Iran should have been a treaty. Properly done, it would be a treaty. It would get turned down because he couldn't get 2/3 of the Senate to pass it.
Right.
It was done as an executive agreement. Most of his stuff, executive agreements and administrative rules within the bureaucracy of the administration. And I'll tell you, it's not going to take long for a Ted Cruz or a Donald Trump to wipe those things out. 24 hours, most of his legacy may be gone.
I'm kind of amazed when I look at this right now. We've become so skewed to the right and left in this country with Democrats and Republicans, it seems. And yet, as you point out, there are good Democrats like there are good Republicans. There are bad Democrats like there are bad Republicans. There are far left Democrats like there may be really far off the map right Republicans. But when we sit down and look at it, one of the things that we seem to be talking about in America right now, Dr. Lameiro, is this idea that people maybe aren't keeping score as closely on what their party or their particular idealistic look at things is. And for example, and we've said a couple times this morning, I'm probably sounding like a broken record now, you got a Donald Trump. Donald Trump probably isn't really a conservative in the normal cloth that conservative would be judged. Donald Trump has all kinds of faults. Donald Trump looks trite and petty. Donald Trump is a showman. I called him this morning the P.T. Barnum of 2015. Donald Trump is a lot of things, and yet we are so thirsty right now for someone who is willing to step out there on the stage and get something done that people seem like they're almost willing to overlook all that to get to that point where they say, yeah, this guy's saying some of the stuff I want to say, so I'm that desperate for leadership, I'll forget everything else. It doesn't matter what he said before. I don't care what he says. I don't care how he downs people. I don't care if he called some woman a bimbo. I don't care about any of that stuff. Because this guy is saying what I'm thinking. So, there seems to be a sea change right now. I'm not sure. Maybe it's just the moment. Maybe it's like what everybody else said. It's this kind of love affair you have during the summer, and then you come back to your senses in the winter. I don't know. Do you see it going that way?
Well, I think you're 100% correct in your analysis. And it goes back to the point I was making a few minutes ago about the people are mad at the parties. And when the American people get upset with the parties, when the parties fail to do what they want for several elections, American history shows us we get a critical presidential election in which the parties get shuffled, and the institutions get shuffled, and the American people win. And the American people are angry and upset with the way this government is running. They are mad at both parties for not, getting the budget under control,
right,
for destroying our health care system with Obamacare, and on and on and on. You know the list.
Yeah.
Illegal immigration, all the problems with illegal immigration, $60 billion of expense to our system to pay for those illegal immigrants who are just walking across the border like it's an open season. So the American people are mad. The parties are going to change. And I think both the Democratic and Republican parties are not going to be the way they are today in 2017. We're going to see different parties.
We're going to take a break. I want to come back and talk a little bit more about that with you and how you see them changing down the line, because it's a really interesting look. And what might be some of the components, what might be some of the changes that they will be drugged to by the American people. Oh, yeah, that's right. We're supposed to be the government. They're supposed to be the hired help, right? We'll ask Dr. Lameiro that when we come back here on the Gary Sutton Show on WSBA. Welcome back to the Gary Sutton Show on WSBA. Dr. Gerard Lameiro with us this morning, an author, philosopher, economist, and engineer. All-around smart guy, and I always enjoy talking to him. America right now, it looks like they are just kind of stepping up, and it looks like it's a really good civics lesson going on out there. When was the last time in August, half a year and more before the first primaries, we were talking about the meaning of the 14th Amendment in this country, Dr. Lameiro? I don't remember that happening a long time. I was a history teacher for 25 years. Those are the things you said in history class, but now the country's getting a little civics lesson because we're raising all kinds, in addition to the normal politics as usual, we're also getting people raising questions that haven't been talked about. And you're seeing it at water coolers, and you're seeing it at jobs, and you're seeing it in families. It's really kind of cool.
Yeah, I think it is. And I think it's because the progressive socialists and the current administration are trying to violate the Constitution because it's in their way. It's in the way of their progressive socialist agenda. It's in their best interest, they think, I guess, to allow all these illegal immigrants into the country with all of the problems. And there's a laundry list of problems. It affects the education system. It affects the healthcare system, you name it.
Well, let me jump in there with something, because you raised something really interesting there. I think, and I've said this on my show a lot of times, I think this is a generational last gasp for the Constitution right now. I think you have several generations. We've got the traditionalists, we've got the baby boomers, we've got Generation X, and we've got the millennials. And you look at them right now, and I don't know the millennials, obviously people say they're thirsting for maybe some knowledge. I don't know if they are thirsty. And I think the idea that we haven't had civics for a long time, for the most part in this country, we haven't necessarily taught the Constitution. I think there's an ignorance coming through right now, and I think it's the last gasp for the traditional and maybe the baby boomer generations to hang on to the Constitution. And once we're off the table, it's going to be a whole different place in the country. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I'm more positive.
I'm glad to hear that. I'd like to be wrong on this, by the way, and I hope you're right and I'm wrong.
Well, I'm actually more optimistic. I had the good fortune to be a member of the Electoral College that elected Ronald Reagan.
Okay.
And he was an optimist, and I don't know, some of it may have rubbed off on me.
Listen, I like the It's Morning in America again appeal that he had. I really did. Yeah. But again, he was kind of the grandfather president. He propped us up on his lap and said, it's going to be okay. Let's move forward and let's be proud of what we have. And I agree with you. I hope I'm wrong. I hope you're right. Go ahead.
Well, let me make a couple of points. One is, if we go back to the 1896 election, people were worried the country was on the brink of disaster and our country was over. And there were like 15,000 bankruptcies. There was issues over the gold standard, the silver standard. There were just a million problems, it seemed like. Oh. And the country was very depressed. And they had a critical election, and that set the stage for the 20th century. And we overcame that pessimism, and we moved the country forward.
You're correct.
Made some mistakes in the 20th century, to be sure, but we moved the country forward. We have the same thing going on now. And one of the things I want to tell you about is I got some feedback from the Hispanic community in that said, you think that Ramos arguing with Trump represents our views? No way. Yeah. And they use some sort of bad language.
I got you, yeah.
And basically, the feedback that I've gotten and what I'm seeing is that these monolithic groups are starting to recognize the Democratic Party doesn't speak for them because they're not in favor of losing their freedom. They're not in favor of a country that goes bankrupt. They don't want to ruin the future for their children, even if they're having trouble speaking English now. So I think the Democratic coalition is breaking up, and I think those who supported the Republican Party and some of the country club Republicans, they're also seeing big change coming. So I think what will happen is you're going to see two new parties. And I think what's going to happen is one of those parties is going to be very conservative. And it's either going to be a newly formed Republican Party that's rock-solid conservative, which is what the people want, or it's going to be a third party. Because if the Republicans nominate somebody who's not going to win, another Mitt Romney or John McCain, a third party will probably get formed, and this is the big difference, the third party will win if it's conservative. Because the winner of the next election is going to be a rock-solid conservative. I'm convinced of that.
I was going to ask you if you see it still thinking in a binary way with the two-party system, or if you see it going multi, and you say the possibility they're going multi-party, and a lot of people...
No, not multi.
But just two different ones.
That third party in 2016, but that third party would become the new dominant party.
All right.
We no longer have the Whigs. In 1840s, we had the Whigs. They went by the wayside around the Civil War because people rejected the Whigs.
Well,
That's when the Republican Party started.
There also the time we had the know-nothings, too, and we could say some people up there right now are know-nothings, if we look at what's going on here. You look at, and again, I think you make a great point. A lot of people say history starts when I was born, ends when I die. That's the provincial look at it. And you look at what happened when Jimmy Carter came in 76, and you had, we're coming out of a political scandal time. You look at what happened when George W. Bush came in. We're coming off the back of a kind of a moral moral scandal at that particular time, although people liked the economy. You look at what happened when Barack Obama came in. We come off the back of a war that was relatively unpopular. And so, there are different reasons. And again, I think you rightfully pointed out the economy is at the basis of this particular one. We'll see where it all goes. But I look forward to talking to you about it along the way here, Dr. Lameiro. Thank you for taking the time to be with us this morning. Truly an honor.
It is great to be with you. Every time we talk, it's fun.
No, I have a lot of fun, too. We're going to put this up on Facebook.com/910WSBA on Monday morning, so we'll have that conversation up if you want to revisit it. And Dr. Lameiro, I look forward to our next time eagerly, okay?
I look forward to it, too.
Have a great week. Take care.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.